Please. I'll do anything, just bring him back. I need him. I can't do anything without him.
Smallville gave us action, romance, and plenty of hope. But it also gave us one moment that shattered fans everywhere. You already know the one. The day Jonathan Kent died. He wasn't just Clark's father, he was the heart of the series. And when that heart stopped beating, everything changed. Today we're revisiting Smallville's most emotional moment and how Jonathan's death shaped not just Clark Kent, but the show itself. Before Clark Kent could ever become Superman, he had to become a man, and Jonathan Kent was the one who made that possible. Unlike Jor-El, who spoke of destiny and greatness, Jonathan grounded Clark in humility, honesty, and responsibility. He didn't just raise a boy with powers, he raised a son with values. Their relationship worked because Jonathan never treated Clark like a god. He reminded him constantly that he was still a kid figuring out life. He set boundaries, enforced discipline, and wasn't afraid to be tough on him when needed. But beneath it all was unconditional love. That combination of firmness and care gave Clark the moral backbone to carry the weight of being Superman. This is why Jonathan's role in Smallville felt so essential. He wasn't just a supporting character, he was the soul of the show. Every time Clark stumbled, it was Jonathan who set him back on course. Every time Clark doubted himself, it was Jonathan who reminded him of who he was. Without Jonathan Kent, there would be no Superman as we know him.
Son, I am happy when you wake up in the morning.
And that's exactly why his death hit so hard. By season 5, fans weren't just watching a father figure on screen. They were invested in the man who embodied everything Clark stood for. Losing Jonathan meant losing that anchor. For Clark, it was the moment when his safety net disappeared. For viewers, it was the moment when Smallville stopped being about a boy hiding his powers and became about a man learning to live without the one person who always guided him. By the time Smallville reached season 5, Clark was standing at a crossroads. He was no longer the high school kid sneaking around with secrets. He was stepping into adulthood. His relationship with Lana had deepened. His bond with his parents remained central. And for the first time, the future felt within reach. But it was exactly this sense of hope that made what came next so devastating. The episode Reckoning began with one of Clark's happiest moments, finally revealing his secret to Lana. For years, his inability to tell her had created distance and pain. But here at last he was honest. Their love was stronger than ever, and fans felt as though a corner had been turned. It seemed like the show was giving Clark everything he wanted: love, acceptance, and a glimpse of a life where he didn't have to hide. But Smallville had always been about growth through struggle. And in Reckoning, that struggle became heartbreak. The truth is, Jonathan's death wasn't just a shocking plot twist. It was carefully built up as Clark's defining tragedy. Writers had long planned John Schneider's exit, knowing that Superman's story traditionally includes the loss of at least one parental figure. It was an essential step, the moment that stripped away Clark's safety and forced him to confront the reality of his journey. The tension leading up to Jonathan's death was masterfully crafted. His Senate run against Lex symbolized a larger battle of values: honesty versus corruption, humility versus ambition. Jonathan was a man trying to protect both his family and his community, standing against forces bigger than himself. But beneath all this, hints of fragility were there. His heart problems, the stress of his campaign, and the toll of guiding Clark through secrets and responsibilities. By setting up Jonathan's death in the midst of Clark's happiness, the writers struck at something deeper than a simple tragedy. They reminded viewers that even in a world of superheroes, life can be cruelly human. Clark could move planets, save lives, and stop meteors, but he couldn't protect his father from fate. That cruel truth is what made Jonathan's loss so unforgettable. Reckoning wasn't just about a character dying. It was about pulling away the illusion of invincibility, both for Clark and for the audience. It showed us that the journey to becoming Superman wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be painful, lonely, and full of sacrifices. and Jonathan Kent's death was the moment that set that tone in stone. After the highs of Clark revealing his secret to Lana and the sense that his life was finally falling into place, tragedy struck with a cruelty that felt almost unbearable. Jonathan Kent collapsed, clutching his chest, and in seconds, Clark's world shattered. What made this scene so devastating wasn't just the loss itself, it was the way it unfolded. There was no supervillain battle, no alien weapon, no Kryptonian curse. It was painfully ordinary, heartbreakingly human. A heart attack. For a show filled with meteor freaks, cosmic threats, and near-death escapes, Jonathan's passing was a reminder of life's unavoidable truth. Not everything can be saved. Clark holding his father in his arms as he died was a moment that stripped away the fantasy of invulnerability. For the first time, the boy who could lift tractors and stop bullets was powerless. That raw helplessness cut deeper than any fight scene ever could. Fans weren't just mourning a character, they were grieving with Clark, feeling the weight of his pain as if it were their own. Another layer of tragedy came from Clark's own guilt. He knew deep down that his choices and his deal with Jor-El had set this fate in motion. Jonathan's death wasn't just a random tragedy, it was tied to Clark's journey, making the loss even harder to bear. This sense of responsibility haunted him long after the funeral, shaping the way he approached every decision as Superman. For fans, Jonathan's death scene was the moment Smallville grew up. It was no longer just a story about a teenager discovering powers. It became a story about loss, responsibility, and the harsh truth that even heroes can't outrun fate. The scene cemented itself not only as the saddest in Smallville's history, but also as one of the most pivotal in Clark Kent's transformation. In those few devastating minutes, the farm boy from Kansas took one more step toward becoming Superman. Until that moment, Clark always had someone to fall back on. No matter what mistake he made, Jonathan was there to steady him, guide him, and remind him of the values that mattered most. Losing him meant losing that safety net, and suddenly, Clark had to carry the weight of responsibility on his own shoulders. The guilt Clark felt was crushing. Deep down, he believed Jonathan's death was the price of his own choices. The deal with Jor-El, the attempt to rewrite fate. In Clark's mind, his father died because of him. That sense of responsibility didn't fade quickly. It haunted him for seasons. It pushed him to be more careful, more selfless, and more determined never to let his loved ones down again. In many ways, Jonathan's death taught Clark the same lesson Uncle Ben teaches Peter Parker. With great power comes great responsibility, but also great consequences. Jonathan's lessons, though, never left him. In moments of doubt, Clark would recall his father's words. That strength is about choice, that humility matters more than power, that family and community are worth protecting. Even after his death, Jonathan remained Clark's moral compass. His presence lingered in visions, memories, and even supernatural appearances throughout the show. Clark might have lost his father, but he never lost his father's voice. Jonathan Kent's death didn't just transform Clark, it transformed Smallville itself. Up until season 5, the show often balanced teen drama with superhero mythology. Clark's dilemmas centered on friendships, crushes, and hiding his secret from the people he cared about. But after Jonathan's death in Reckoning, the series took a darker, more mature turn. It stopped being just a story about a boy with powers and became a story about a man preparing to shoulder the weight of the world. For the writers, this was intentional. Jonathan's role was always to ground Clark, to be the earthly counterbalance to Jor-El's cosmic demands. Once Clark lost him, there was no buffer left. Clark was now caught directly between his Kryptonian destiny and his own choices, with no father figure to mediate. That shift fundamentally raised the stakes, not just in terms of villains, but in terms of Clark's identity. Every mistake now felt heavier, every decision more permanent. The show itself also deepened in tone. Themes of mortality, sacrifice, and inevitability took center stage. Viewers realized that this wasn't a story where everyone got happy endings. Smallville wasn't afraid to show that even the strongest heroes experience heartbreak, and that tragedy is part of what makes them heroes. In many ways, Jonathan's death was the moment Smallville crossed from being a teen drama into being a true Superman origin story. It also redefined relationships. Martha Kent stepped into a new role, no longer just Clark's supportive mother, but also his sole surviving parent, forcing her to become stronger and more independent. Clark and Martha's bond deepened through grief, giving the show some of its most heartfelt moments. Meanwhile, Lex's reaction underscored the growing chasm between him and Clark. Lex saw Jonathan's death as proof that fate was cruel, feeding into his own darker philosophy. By taking Jonathan away, Smallville forced both Clark and the audience to grow up. And in doing so, it elevated itself from an entertaining superhero drama into something deeper, a story about loss, resilience, and the cost of becoming a legend. But what about you? Do you remember where you were when you first saw Reckoning? How did Jonathan's death hit you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if this episode still stays with you, and subscribe for more Smallville deep dives.
Bye-bye.